Hi, I'm Violet. After my dad died, she took over his restaurant business, but she ran it terribly and was greedy with money. So when I told her I wanted to apply to all the best universities in the country, she just laughed in my face and said that I'd better rob a bank then because she wasn't paying for it. It's like she enjoyed making my life miserable. I knew she had money from my dad's life insurance, but she spent it all on herself. She made me wear hideous, old clothes that were too small for me, and she refused to buy me new textbooks. She said education was a waste of money, and that she wouldn't spend her hard-earned cash on helping me succeed, and that when she was my age, she was already a mom. Whatever. I mean, this wasn't my fault. One day, we had a big exam at school, and this was my one chance. If I did well in it, I'd get a full scholarship for university. I woke up early, but when I got to my bedroom door, it was locked. I started screaming for my mom to open it, but she pretended she didn't hear me, and then she left. She'd snuck into my room during the night and taken my phone, so I couldn't even call the school and tell them. I thought about jumping out the window, but we lived on the 6th floor, and I'd probably die. Luckily, there was one teacher who encouraged me to apply to those universities, and she persuaded the school to let me retake the exam. She turned up at our house one night to talk to my mom about scholarship applications. My mom had just gotten home from work and was in a bad mood, but as soon as the teacher mentioned a scholarship, my mom's ears perked up. Suddenly, Mom changed her tune and said I could apply, but I could only go if there was a scholarship included. My teacher promised my mom I'd get one, and that we didn't need to worry. So it was settled then. I filled out all the applications and went with Mom to the post office, and we sent them off. Then I waited. Mom made me work in the restaurant and gave me all the disgusting jobs like cleaning the toilets and taking the trash out. Months had passed, and I still hadn't heard back from any of the universities. But I'd been in the post office and watched my mom hand them over, so the universities would definitely have received my applications. Had I been rejected? Mom was acting even more smug than usual. The restaurant was doing well, and she started buying herself fancy clothes, and then one day she bought a new car. Every time I asked her if there was any mail for me, she just laughed. Honey, let's face it, you ain't getting in. You're too dumb, now get back to the kitchen. Those dishes won't wash themselves. And then the letters started arriving. All rejection letters. I couldn't believe it. I had got straight A's in every exam. How had this happened? I burst into tears every time a rejection letter arrived, and my mom always laughed, and again reminded me that I was dumb and that I was destined to be a dishwasher for the rest of my days. Now I'd finished school, and summer vacation was almost over. I should have been heading to university a few days later, but instead, I was working as my mom's slave. Mom was seriously splashing the cash now. Every day we drove to work together, and then after about 10 minutes, she would leave again and only come back at the end of the day. I couldn't believe it. Then, at the end of the month, she'd give herself a huge salary, and I wasn't even earning minimum wage. All my friends headed off to university, while I was washing dishes. Life really went downhill for me after that. I felt so depressed. Eventually, my friends stopped contacting me. They just couldn't understand why I'd want to work in Mom's restaurant. But what choice did I have? Mom was useless, and I refused to let Dad's legacy die like that. I was the only one who kept the restaurant going. Soon I started dating Bernie. He was one of the chefs, and we got on well because my mom drove us both crazy. She was barely even at work these days, and she was so secretive about her life. I started to think that maybe she'd met someone. She seemed different these days. Meanwhile, I was busy at work all day, every day. After 6 months, I decided to reapply to Harvard. I left my application in Bernie's car, and he said he'd drive me to the post office after work. But that never happened. During our shift, someone came running into the restaurant to say that my mom had passed out on the street. Bernie and I ran outside, and there she was, lying on the sidewalk. We put her in Bernie's car and drove to the hospital, but on the way she woke up and said she just fainted from exhaustion. And then I completely forgot to post the letter. Why was she so tired? She was clearly dating someone, and then the thought crossed my mind that maybe she had another job. I mean, she had so much money, it seemed. When I remembered about the application later that night, I ran to the car, but it was gone. I searched everywhere, but it wasn't there. I asked Bernie, and he said he hadn't seen it. But suddenly I didn't believe him. He'd acted weird when I said I wanted to go to Harvard. So what if he had deliberately hidden it? "Where is it?" I screamed. But he said he had no idea what I was talking about. I turned his house upside down searching for it, and in the end I was so angry that I just left. Then Bernie and I broke up. He said I had no right to blame him for something like that, and when my mom found out, she said, "Bernie was too good for you, babe. Bit out of your league, you know?" When she said that, I lost it. I grabbed her bag off the counter and threw it at her. She leapt out of the way, and everything in her bag went flying. I have never seen her scramble to pick things up as fast as that before. She was clearly hiding something. I walked out of there, feeling like the biggest loser in the world. What was I doing? I'd lost everything. I decided I didn't even want to work in the restaurant anymore. It was too awkward being around Bernie. I started packing up all my stuff, and then my life took a darker turn. The police showed up and arrested me. They told me I hadn't paid taxes for 3 years, and that I could be sentenced for up to 2 years in prison. What? But that made no sense. I told them they had the wrong person, that my mom was the owner and that I just worked for her. But then they showed me all of the documents that said the restaurant was in my name and that it had been changed after my dad died. I told them I was only 20 and this was impossible, that I hadn't signed anything. But they just laughed and said, "Excuses, excuses." My mom came to the court case and said she'd watch me sign everything and that it had been my responsibility. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. And then I went to prison. It was horrible. My mom was a monster. Now it all made sense. Instead of paying taxes, she'd been using that money to fund her fancy life, all those new clothes and that car. It made me sick. Now I had to pay the price. My mom didn't even come and visit me in prison. Last I heard, the restaurant had been shut down, and I never heard from Bernie again. He probably wasn't interested in speaking to a criminal, even though I hadn't even done anything wrong. When I got out of prison, I had no idea what I'd do. I didn't even dream of contacting my mom. I never wanted to see her again. I applied for so many jobs, but no one would hire an ex-prisoner. And then finally I got hired. And you'll never believe where. Harvard. I got hired to clean the bathrooms, and I couldn't help but laugh. I dreamt of going to Harvard my whole life, and there I was, scrubbing toilets. The universe was laughing at me. What a joke. But I couldn't complain. It was better than nothing. One day I got to work, and there were so many people around. I realized it was graduation day. And then I did a quick calculation and realized this would have been my graduation. I ran into the bathroom that I'd later be cleaning and locked myself in one of the cubicles. And then I burst into tears. My life was a mess. Suddenly I stopped crying when I heard 2 girls coming in. They were gossiping about someone, and she had the same name as me. I can't believe Violet is even graduating. I mean, she fails like every exam. Yeah, and isn't it weird how old she looks? There's no way she's only 25. She looks about 40. And then they walked out laughing. I wiped my tears away and went to get my mop and bucket. I started cleaning the bathroom, but then I got curious and decided to go watch the graduation ceremony from the back of the hall. I pretended to be mopping, but I couldn't help but stop and watch as everyone went up to collect their degrees. It should have been me up there. I turned to leave, and then the strangest thing happened. They were calling my name. I wondered if I was dreaming, and then I thought maybe someone else had exactly the same name as me. And then I spotted her. My mom. She was wearing a gown and walking onto the stage. I dropped the mop. I was so shocked. And a few people turned to look at me, and one man even told me to shut up. My mom was graduating from Harvard using my name. And then it clicked into place. The reason she disappeared from work every day. The way she suddenly had all this money. Obviously she'd used my scholarship. And then she'd gone so far as to get me locked up so I wouldn't find out. I thought about running onto the stage right there and then and humiliating her. But then I had a better plan. I'd let her think everything had worked out for a bit. And then we'd see which one of us was the dumb loser. I slipped out of the hall and waited until everyone left the hall and headed to the drink ceremony on the lawn. And then I called the cops and told them everything. I watched from a nearby tree as they ran out onto the lawn to arrest her. Everyone around her was so shocked. It was amazing to watch. She started screaming as they marched her away. It was my mom's turn to go to prison now. And not just for identity theft. but for forging my signature on the business contract too and getting me falsely imprisoned. I hadn't spoke to her in years, but that moment where I got to watch her being sentenced was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. She'd seriously ruined my life. She kept saying sorry and that she just wanted to experience what it was like to be a student, seeing as she'd never had the opportunity after becoming a teen mom. Anyway, the good news is Harvard have officially apologized to me and offered me a place next year. I can't wait. And as for my mom, well, I hope she likes prison because she's going to be there for a long time. What do you think of my story? Please share your comments and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories.